We begin the news in the Middle East, where Lebanon has accused Israel of targeting journalists in what it terms a deliberate attack that has killed 3 journalists, according to a Lebanese official. Prime Minister Najib Mikati said the attack targeted journalists was deliberate and is a war crime. Israel has been at war with Hezbollah in Lebanon since late last month in a bid to secure its northern border after nearly a year of cross-border fire from the Iran-backed armed group.
بظل هذه الهجمة الشرسة يلي عم يمارسها العدو لا سيما بحق الصحفيين هي جريمة موصوفة، جريمة دولية.
أنا اللي صار معي إنه نايم من الساعة 12 على الساعة 3 الصبح 3:30 صوت قوي وبس ما كأني ما سمعته، بس في هيك شيء وبس اللي حسيت فيه أنا نايم عملت الشمال نزل وزن هائل جدا علي، ما عدت قادر اتحرك نهائيا، يعني ثبتت هيك على شمال هيك صرت اتنفس الغبرة. نحن اللي الحمد لله نجانا وجود السيارات بنش، يعني الشلال اللي انضرب هون والشلال تعاولنا دغري بلزوا فيها 4 أمتار المساحة بيناتهم اللي بصفوا سيارتين، فهو السيارتين هن اللي انقذونا لانه دايفشين.
Meanwhile, the president of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Mirjana Spolarik, expresses concern about journalists being targeted. This comes after 3 media workers were killed by an Israeli airstrike in southern Lebanon. According to her, the organization needs the objective information that only journalists can provide in a conflict. And she adds that the protection of journalists in war is extremely important and has to be upheld and respected, warning that the surge in violence against humanitarian workers underscores a decline in their adherence to international humanitarian law and poses a direct threat to ICRC mission.
Journalists are protected persons as long as they don't engage directly in military activities, and you know, the reproach of applying propaganda is not eliminating this protection. We are concerned about journalists coming under attack because we also depend on objective information that journalists can provide in a situation of conflict, and the civilian population also depends on having access to objective reporting. So the protection of journalists in war is extremely important and has to be upheld and respected.
Now, 2 people have been killed after being wounded by shrapnel from a rocket barrage launched from Lebanon into northern Israel on Friday, according to the hospital and the army. In a statement by the hospital spokesman, a 22-year-old man and a 25-year-old woman were pronounced dead after they were brought in critical condition, with the army earlier saying that approximately 30 projectiles from Lebanon had been intercepted near the Arab town of Majd al-Krum in the Galilee region. Still talking about the tension in the Middle East, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, said the darkest moment of the conflict in Gaza was unfolding in the north of the territory, warning that Israel could end up emptying the area of all Palestinians. Israel, which has been fighting Hamas in Gaza since the deadly October 7 attack, launched a major assault in its north this month, saying it wanted to stop the militants from regrouping there. According to Turk, Palestinian armed groups also reportedly continue to operate among civilians, exposing them to harm.
One of the darkest moments of the Gaza conflict is unfolding in the north of the Strip. As we speak, the Israeli military is subjecting an entire population to bombing, siege, and starvation, as well as being forced to choose between mass displacement and being trapped in an active conflict zone. The bombing in North Gaza is non-stop. The Israeli military has ordered hundreds of thousands to move, with no guarantees of return. But there is no safe way to leave. The bombs continue to fall, The Israeli military is separating families and detaining many people, and people fleeing have been reportedly shot at. To all the world's leaders, I remind you of your responsibility to ensure respect for international humanitarian law as set out in the Geneva Conventions. These are universally accepted and binding norms developed to preserve the very bare minimum of humanity. I implore you to put the protection of civilians and human rights first, and not to abandon that minimum.
Now, Jordan's foreign minister has on Friday called for pressure on Israel to end ethnic cleansing in strong remarks as he met U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in London. Deploring the humanitarian situation in northern Gaza, Heyman Safadi told Blinken that ethnic cleansing agenda must stop. He adds that they are on the verge of a regional conflict and Israel must halt its aggressions on Gaza and Lebanon, as well as any unilateral or unlawful actions in the West Bank that are further destabilizing the situation.
We meet at a very, very critical moment. As you mentioned, the humanitarian situation is really difficult. We look at northern Gaza now, where we do see ethnic cleansing taking place, and that has got to stop. Lebanon has to stop immediately. Nothing justifies its continuation. Lebanon is ready to implement 1701. That will guarantee the security of all. My short answer is yes, it's got to stop now.
There too, we have a sense of real urgency in getting to a diplomatic resolution and the full implementation of UN Security Council Resolution 1701, such that there can be real security along the border between Israel and Lebanon, and people both sides of the border can have the confidence to be able to return to their homes.
Now, joining us on the news to discuss this is a foreign policy analyst, Bolu Michael B. Bolu, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So let's understand, what implications do you see this airstrike having on the relationship between Israel and Lebanon, especially concerning the ongoing tensions with Hezbollah and, of course, Hamas?
Well, it's expected that there might be heightened tension between Israel and Lebanon, particularly, increased hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah. Hezbollah is quite popular in the southern part of Lebanon, and it's quite unfortunate that the persons that were targeted are journalists. Even though they are allegedly linked to Hezbollah, it's still the fact that they are journalists, and we might see some level of retaliation from Hezbollah, because they might consider it as a direct confrontation. And if this ping pong back and forth retaliation continues to happen, it might really lead to a regional crisis. The Lebanese information minister has described it as a war crime. And strong rhetorics like that are capable of drawing attention from international organizations, as well as countries who may be calling for increased confrontation of Lebanon against Israel. And it just becomes a very messy situation if we're finding countries and international organizations poking fingers at one country. It may actually provoke Israel, and they may have a conversation with their allies.
Well, I agreed. It seems as though international bodies and the world powers are not able to actually curb or actually, call to order Israel in this matter. But then, how do you think they view Israel's military policy and its attitude when we talk about the onslaughts in conflict zones?
Okay, the fact that the journalists are being targeted, especially areas that are considered to be relatively calm, might show that Israel is disregarding international law that covers journalists, especially those in the war zones. And organizations like the Reporters Without Borders have raised concern against Israel's operation, and such can actually lead to a call for greater accountability on the part of Israel. So it's quite unfortunate that journalists are being targeted, because it can lead to a level of apprehension among journalists and reduced coverage of conflict zones, which is not good for the world generally.
Okay, so the ideology, of course, of the IDF in this crusade is to bring to a total halt terrorism in the Middle East. But the Jordanian Prime Minister or Foreign Minister has come out to say that this is ethnic cleansing. How do you see it?
Well, I think it's kind of it's a really strong rhetoric, and it's important that both sides kind of calm things down in terms of the things they say. One is saying it's a war crime, the other is saying something else, and these are really, really strong terms, and Israel might be shooting themselves in the foot, definitely, because their allies, including the United States, they are these countries, the Western democracies are really big when it comes to press freedom, and I'm really curious to see how it's going to play out if you allies of Israel, call them out on their military operations, because they place really high value on press freedom, and if U.S., for instance, is calling Israel out, then it means that Israel they've successfully shot themselves in the foot.
But it seems as though Israel is not resting on its oars when it comes to fighting terrorism there to a standstill. But then do you think that, Palestine and its allies have gotten the message never to mess with Israel or to provoke Israel because of the aftermath that we're seeing playing out?
Well, I don't think so, because we're still seeing retaliations on both ends, and don't forget that they also have their own allies, in terms of countries like Iran, for example, are strongly backing them. So even if it's not only one party that is aggrieved, has grievances against Israel, there are other countries as well. So even if one party is not really taking action against Israel, there are other parties or allies in the opposition are willing to supply the weapons and fight Israel because they have their own grievances as well. So they have a common mission of bringing Israel down as much as possible. So both sides, in war, they always choose sides. We always have allies. And the fact that we're still seeing retaliations, I don't think either sides have gotten any message about, not messing with Israel or Israel not messing with Lebanon or Iran.
Okay, Bolu Michael B., thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
On Beyond the Continent, we go on a short break. When we return, Trump holds a rally in Battleground, Nevada. These and many more stories will come your way after the short timeout. Do stay with us. Thanks for staying with us. We take you to Europe, where President Vladimir Putin has not denied that North Korean troops have been deployed to Russia after the U.S. said it had evidence Pyongyang has moved soldiers for possible use in Ukraine. Putin made the remarks during a news conference that wrapped up the BRICS summit in the Russian city of Kazan. He also insisted that Washington's stance will determine its relationship with the U.S. following the presidential elections. Kremlin leader also struck a hardline tone, warning the West it was an illusion to think Russia could be defeated on the battleground and that any peace deal would have to recognize Russia's control of swaths of Ukrainian territory.
Что касается наших взаимоотношений с Корейской Народно-Демократической Республикой, как вы знаете, сегодня, по-моему, только ратифицирован наш договор о стратегическом партнерстве. Там есть статья 4. И мы нисколько никогда не сомневались, что северокорейское руководство относится к нашим договоренностям серьезно. Но что и как мы будем делать, это уже наше дело. Мы готовы рассматривать любые варианты мирных договоренностей, исходя из реалий, которые складываются на земле. И не готов ни на что другое. Как будут строиться российско-американские отношения после выборов, это прежде всего зависит от Соединенных Штатов. Если Соединенные Штаты открыты к строительству нормальных отношений с Россией, то...
European Union Chief Ursula von der Leyen has pledged 20 million euros in immediate aid for Bosnia after deadly and devastating floods. Recall that earlier this month, 27 people died in floods and landslides that washed away roads, railway tracks and bridges, cutting off many populated areas in central and southern Bosnia.
You mentioned the Solidarity Fund. Indeed, this is the fund for natural disasters that member states can use for reconstruction, but also candidate countries, and it is very good that you will apply for that. But we thought at the moment, right now, you need immediate help in addition on top, and therefore we decided to mobilize 20 million euros for the immediate help right now, and then in a second step, the Solidarity Fund will support you in reconstruction. It was heartbreaking to see yesterday the destruction and devastation caused by the floods in Jablanica. I really want to reassure the people of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and specifically of that region, that Europe stands with them. We're by your side and we will continue to support you.
In North America, U.S. Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump says he can make anybody do anything through the use of tariffs in his Las Vegas rally in Battleground, Nevada. He adds that he is going to launch the largest deportation program in American history and get critical race theory and transgender insanity out of the schools if he's elected. This is coming after Kamala Harris held an all-star rally on Thursday in swing states, Georgia, where former U.S. President Barack Obama and rock legend Bruce Springsteen joined her final push for voters ahead of November's nail-biter election.
And I say the most beautiful word in the entire dictionary of words is the word tariff. I love tariff. I can make anybody do anything through the use of tariffs. I can keep people out of war. I can keep us out of war. The word tariff is the most beautiful. I think I'll do this. We will get critical race theory and transgender insanity the hell out of our schools. And we will keep men out of women's sports. I will defend religious liberty, I will restore free speech, and I will defend the right to keep and bear arms, our Second Amendment. Immediately upon taking the oath of office, I will launch the largest deportation program in American history.
Meanwhile, two brothers who were convicted of murdering their parents in a case that shook America more than 3 decades ago are a step closer to being released on parole. A Los Angeles County District Attorney has recommended that Eric and Lyle Menendez be re-sentenced by a judge because new evidence merited a review. The 1989 murders of Kitty and Jose Menendez in their Beverly Hills mansion have gripped the U.S. for years, recently inspiring a popular Netflix series. 53-year-old Eric Menendez and 56-year-old Lyle Menendez are currently serving life in prison without possibility of parole in California. In Asia, at least 76 people have been killed in central and northern Philippines after tropical storm Trami battered the country, triggering landslides and flooding that trapped residents on the roofs and displaced nearly 320,000 people. As the storm leaves the country on Friday with a trail of destruction, state forecasters are raising the rare possibility that it could make a U-turn next week as it is pushed back by high-pressure winds developing in the South China Sea. Philippine Provincial Police Chief on Friday said 47 people were killed, mainly in landslides set off by Trami in Batangas province, south of capital Manila. That's all on Beyond the Continent. Don't forget to watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Likon Onobanjo.